Okay, morning everyone. So I make that 8:30 exactly, so we're going to kick off now. Thank you all for joining us today. My name's Jack Southon, and we're presenting this on behalf of the CIWEM Metropolitan branch, but very welcome to anyone, no matter where you are from. This is part 7 of the breakfast webinar series we're running, which is a weekly meeting just to go through one of the 14 competencies each week and try and give some people some ideas and some inspiration for fulfilling their own chartered competencies paperwork. As previous weeks, that we're going to introduce competencies, set out some key questions, show you some examples, and then set some activities to do today and this week, as well as introduce the cross-referencing to other accreditations if you're looking at Chartered Scientist, Engineer, or Environmentalist. We'll then take any questions that you have. So if you do use the Q&A box as you're going through, please don't feel like I'm ignoring you. We will cycle back and answer all those questions that we can at the end of the session. So just as a bit of a preamble, just to let those last couple of people who are joining in a little bit late today join us, I just wanted to spend a moment to reflect on what is competence and what do we mean by competency. And the best way to explain that, in my opinion, is to look at our journey to competence. So if we're looking at any particular competency, we start off by having an awareness of that theme. So whether that be health and safety, the need for continued professional development, or indeed today, we're looking at our ability to manage resources. So where did you become aware of the need for effective resource management? And that might be, earlier in your life, as part of your any graduate or postgraduate studies that you undertook, or when you joined industry. The next stage in your competence journey is when you are able to assist in that area. So if you're able to assist in the management of resources, then that might have been reporting your own availability and forecasting the amount of time it will take you to do work. You might be monitoring project spend or use of another resource and keeping track of that. And then it's able to assist under supervision. So you might then actually be leading on that the management of that resource under direct supervision of another person. So that's our point where we start then to transition into what we'd call competence. So the next stage beyond that is where you are working without supervision. You're able to do that task competently without supervision, and that is really the bar that we are looking for when it comes to Chartered Water Environmental Manager and the other chartered competencies. It's able to deliver on that competency without supervision. There is a level beyond that where you're an expert in it. You might be a recognised industry leader in that, and you might be supervising and teaching others in that, and you may, for certain areas, provide independent opinion and review of other people's work. We don't have to be experts in all of the competencies to achieve Chartered Water Environmental Manager, but we do have to be competent without supervision. So that, if you think about everything, that's the minimum bar that we need to surpass in order to be successful in our Chartered Water Environmental Manager application. Competence without supervision. So that's excellent. So that's allowed another 18 people to join us. So as I say, we're focusing today on our ability to manage resources effectively and efficiently. So just to unpack this a little bit, our key themes for this one are resources, and we're going to go into what are resources in a little bit. But really, we're looking at our ability to manage effectively and efficiently. So think about that when you are preparing your answers. Does it answer the question of how you manage resources effectively and efficiently? The official CIWEM guidance in regard to this competence very much, in my opinion, focuses on financial, technical, and staffing. But I think, and that can cause some people who don't have a line manager or a project manager experience some difficulty in responding to this in the first instance. But what I'm going to try and introduce today is actually that is just one example of how you could address the competency. It's a very strong example, but if you do not have those experiences, there are other ways that you could be managing resources effectively and efficiently to address this competence. And I'd like to encourage you to explore those options if you don't have a line manager or a project manager role. So the official ones, as I say, set out here. You'll be expected to demonstrate how your working practices contribute to your organisation or your workplace, financially, technically, and personally. You could, for example, demonstrate an understanding of recruitment and selection process, of resources and manpower for a piece of work or project, and how you work effectively to deliver your responsibilities on time with the appropriate standards and to budget. You could also identify training needs and skills gaps, opportunities to utilise new emerging technologies or processes, and to promote the sharing of best practice knowledge, including your ability to assess the changing requirements of your organisation's industry. So, as I say, those very much focus on staff, recruitment, managing projects, managing staff within budgets, but also then looking at making sure that those staff are well trained and know what they're doing to deliver effectively and efficiently. The official key questions then are, how do you fulfill your responsibilities in a timely and professional manner? Do you have budgetary responsibilities or understand the budgetary process? What resources are managed and how do you ensure efficiency? What have you introduced to improve performance? How do you secure appropriate resources? Have you optimized a system or process to maximize efficiency? And what training have you prepared or delivered? So I would really focus on, as I say, how do you secure appropriate resources, or what resources do you manage is the first call for this set of key questions. And when we look at the weekly tasks, the daily tasks later, I've reframed it a little bit around that. So start with what resources you manage, and then how do you in your delivery of that, drive efficiency and effective management. So breaking that down a little bit, I want to talk about resources. And in my opinion, as some examples of what resources can be are people and staff. So very much what we've talked about. And that could be people who directly work for you if you're a line manager. It could be people that you assemble as part of a project team or a task team, if you're a project manager or a task manager. But also could be volunteers that you manage and recruit to not necessarily paid staff, or other people related activities, their workforce. It could also be budget. So budget is a very clear resource that we can use to spend to achieve our goals and our outcomes, and making sure that we manage those budgets, whether that is an independent commission or a budget from government or a grant, how we make sure that we are using that finance to the most effective outcome. The other option here then is it could be time. So that could be literally like staff time, but it could also be a program. So if you've got a task that you need to achieve in a 6 week or 6 month or 6 year outcome, how you manage that time as a resource to make sure that you get the most effective outcome as well. A bit more of a tangential one here. It could be something like ITC hardware. So particularly relevant for my work, we have a finite number of licenses, computers, processing power, and data storage. So we, one of sort of my early career roles in managing resources was to organize and schedule different competing demands on licenses and processing resources to make sure that we made the most out of those. We didn't have any downtime, and any peaks in demand were managed. Again, slightly less traditional interpretation of resources here could be things like space. So I've seen some really good examples from people who look at this from a water utility perspective, particularly wastewater treatment plants, where typically you've got quite a constraint, you've got a limit on the size of the site, and you might be trying to introduce a new treatment train process, and you have to fit that within the available land use space. So you're thinking about the space of the site as a resource that you have to use in the most efficient way possible to deliver the requirement on that site, and that can really drive effective and efficient use of that space. But also capacity. So if you've got a finite capacity to deliver on things, how can you manage that? The best use of that might be, as I say, a throughput for something, or a limit on what you can do. We also obviously have natural resources, so that could be water, as in water supply, and which is obviously starting to creep up the agenda at the moment. but also materials. So if you're using, if you're involved in engineering projects or design, how you use materials, or if you're involved in process delivery, what materials you use and how you make sure you use those in the most effective and efficient way. The final example I've given here, but again, this is not it's not an exhaustive list, is looking at knowledge or experience. So thinking about how you use that and how you maintain that and continue to deliver that for other people. And that speaks to the sort of the official guidance examples where they talk about training others and arranging training courses. So if you think about them, you may have some key individuals with absolutely critical knowledge for a project or experience, and how you manage their availability and get them to contribute to multiple projects, make the most of their time, and also upskill others. But okay, so just setting out this slide is really to think about if you're not a line manager, if you're not a project manager, these are some other areas of resource management that you could think about. So when we look through the examples, don't feel limited by resources being people or money. Think about all these other things that we could be doing with them. So taking us into examples then, so example 1 here is I'm responsible for numerous project management tasks. I use Microsoft Project to program projects and use in-house Excel-based spreadsheet for managing staff input requirements. I use quality plans and risk registers for more high-level projects, all of which help me monitor delivery throughout the course of the project. So this example hasn't named and shamed sometimes a specific project, so that would be really good. I manage multiple projects, such as, and then name a particular project, so you've got that hook in there, and people can ask you about that project later. But what I do like about it is that it talks about how they manage their resources, particularly staff input. So this is very much a staff management example here, and the use of the reference to quality plans is alluding to looking at who's doing what on the project and who's reviewing things as well. So it does set out the understanding that you need multiple different people on the project and how you organize that efficiently and effectively. So I think that's really good. Example 2 then is, as a more senior member of my team, I mentor more junior staff, and I feel this offers the opportunity to remind them of their need for good time management and to assist them with their concerns over workload. I'm currently mentoring a recent graduate as part of this role. We have weekly meetings to discuss current resourcing, upcoming projects, and other issues. So again, this is very clearly saying I'm supporting this individual in developing that. The tools, the way they use that is weekly meetings to discuss current resourcing, upcoming projects, and other issues. So showing you very, very clear management of that individual's time as a resource, and also supporting them in developing that themselves. So looking back at our introductory slide where we're talking about where do you sit in your competence journey, ability to do it under supervision, that graduate at that point will be starting to manage their own time as a resource under the supervision of this individual. But this individual is delivering on that competence without supervision, and in fact, by mentoring someone else, could be pushing themselves up into that expert category. So I think that's a really nice sort of subtle integration of that as well. Whilst it doesn't reference a specific project, it does reference in some way a specific individual and gives a very clear, tangible example of how they delivered on that. Example number 3 then, so throughout my career, I've carefully managed my responsibilities in the timely and professional manner. I recently involved in updating a study. Before starting, I carefully reviewed the comments submitted and identified what work was required. So that's very much around scoping, understanding the scope of what you're doing, and then it takes us straight into the competency. So I listed all the activities to ensure that nothing was missed. This meant that I was able to accurately estimate how long the updates would take, so I could provide the client with this information and make sure it was completed in a timely manner. So this example here is saying the way I manage my resources is to really thoroughly understand what's required of the project, plan that out in terms of programs, so the client's time, but also you could lead that to your own staff resourcing or project resourcing. And they're using that program then as a tool to effectively manage and to drive efficiency. I also identified the dependencies where additional information were required from the client or colleagues and set interim deadlines for these to ensure they did not delay completion. So again, recognising that there are key steps that they've undertaken on that particular project, which have helped them as waypoints through the project to make sure they are driving the project efficiently. Example 4 then, this is from a water utility background point of view. So I planned a program and managed the budgets and resources for the WRMP 19 DO assessment. It's clearly not one of my examples because I couldn't tell you what one of those assessments is, but hopefully that's meaningful to some in the water industry. If not, think about this as a regular assessment that has to be done every 5 years or so, or a particular type of project. Ensuring that they were deployed efficiently and delivered outputs of an appropriate quality. So that was really clearly set out the technical example here. And then the next part talks about how this person has delivered on that and used ways to deliver efficiently and effectively. So each month I reviewed the progress and updated an issue log and risk register. Presenting these monthly steering group meetings also enabled me to propose and discuss potential solutions to mitigate ongoing issues and keep the project on track. So that's really good, clear communication and feedback with the project stakeholders to make sure that everyone's on board with that and the project can be delivered efficiently and effectively. Following my initial project scoping and required modelling approaches, became clear that the budget spent on the previous round, the WRMP 14 DO assessment, would not be sufficient for the 2019 assessment. So that was then communicated to the executive team and looking at an innovative modelling approach required to meet the guidance and wider resilience agenda. So they were able to then manage that change there and deliver really effectively on the requirements, the current requirements, and not necessarily just looking back at what was done previously. So example 5 here, throughout my career I've project managed a range of external contractors. I've managed expectations of delivery with a clear scope, including the quality and quantity of outputs required, plus time, resource, and cost constraints. I have managed positive collaboration, working relationships, and ongoing communications to facilitate a transparent, iterative, and dynamic process, which allows for review and feedback within project time constraints without incurring additional costs. So I love this example because it talks about external contractors as a resource, which is twofold. So that's the manpower of the external contractor, but also the budget that you're holding them to pay for their time as well. And it really sets you up as a senior position in this role without having to actually day-to-day manage an individual contractor. It could be a group of contractors or a particular commission. I think here you've also identified some of the really key points in terms of how you manage that, and that's both time, cost, and program. So the only thing I would perhaps change is just I've probably taken out of this example, to be fair, is just reference a particular commission, a specific commission, which could just drill down a little bit further. Example 6 then, as a senior modeler and assistant project manager on the modelling framework contracts, I've been responsible for managing projects with quite a large budget. That's fantastic. And particularly a UK team of 6. I use the company's business management systems, and a lot of companies will have a BMS system, so ISO 9001 type system, which supports a framework of managing a project cycle, project lifetime cycle. So using your company's tools, if you're using those, that's absolutely fine. It's just your use of them that we really want to see. I've also responsible for managing a remote project staff of 5 for a surface water monitoring project, and responsible for the team's outputs, their bookable time, so looking at their utilisation and checking and reviewing their process. So there we're touching on the quality aspects of delivery, but that does speak to effective and efficient delivery if you've got a really rigorous quality management system there. But we will touch more on quality later in the C competencies. Tracking progress and therefore deadlines was a challenge due to the distance and remoteness of this team. They overcame this by conducting monthly video conferences to discuss issues and reviewing the programme of upcoming work and possible delays. Work locally with the team for 3-week periods, for 2 3-week periods, sitting alongside them, sharing knowledge and getting to know them better. this supported better understanding of the team structure and stronger connection to the team. So this example here really talks about the personal level that the person's been working at to drive effective and efficient delivery, and the resource here is staff again. So example 7, I think this is probably our last example for today. I manage the quality and delivery of work on a number of consultants who provide an external resource for developer impact assessments. I'm the link between asset planning and developer services and network operations teams, answer questions, clear up ambiguities that could cause confusion, and deliver a simple, correct and concise results. I conduct interviews for a modelling assistant role and developed interview scripts used to score candidates. So there's 2 examples in there in one, looking at the management contractors and consultants again, which is really good, and seeing that third sentence about answering questions, clearing up ambiguities, talks about how they deliver that in an efficient, effective way. But then also it touches in that last sentence about recruitment and recognising, bringing in new resources to that team. So those are examples. Moving on to our questions, and as I say, I've rephrased these slightly and reframed them from the official ones. So you could use either set if you want, but if you find the first ones that we put up earlier, when you look back at the slides, a bit challenging to jump into, then do have a look at these first. So what resources do you manage? So have a look at those examples of resources that we gave earlier, and think about which ones of those apply to you, or which ones which aren't listed that you manage, or you're involved in the management of. Then how does the work that you do contribute to your organisational workplace? So specifically, how does your management of those resources contribute to your organisational workplace? And that could be financially, technically, or professionally, but also could just be through delivery. So, if you've got a limited resource, how does the work you do contribute to delivery of your organisation's objectives within that constraint? What have you done that has helped improve performance? So again, specifically looking at your management of that resource to help improve performance, and what tools have you developed to monitor progress and improve efficiency? And if there's reference to that resource, then that's even better. Finally, and again, not necessarily essential for this one, but what training have you prepared or delivered to support people if it is a staff management or role, then how have you done that? But equally, you could be here looking at where have you supervised or supported others in their management of resources. So a few different ideas for you there. The activity for this week then, so that was the previous ones were what we're hoping you to do today, but for this week, if you spend 15 minutes answering the key questions for this week, and then looking back at where we started with this presentation, I want you to think about where you became aware of the need to manage resources. So just spend a sentence on that. This isn't necessarily going to manage your competence, but it's going to help you frame your own position in regard to this competence and how confident you feel responding to it. Think about, or maybe jot a line down about when you're able to assist in the management of resources. So when did that, what point in your career did you start doing that? Think back and find an example. Where have you been able to manage resources under supervision? And then the core of what you're actually going to put into your C.WEM reply will be the examples where you are competent to manage resources without supervision. And if you have any examples of where you're an expert resource manager, then drop those in as well. But that's really what we're looking at. But those last 2 points, the competent management of resources without supervision, and where available, the expert resource management experience. But just think about where you are in that journey now, reflect on what you might need to do to push you over to that competent without supervision level, and prepare 5 bullet points on the evidence for this competency. That's our final weekly task for this one. Just to flag up the cross-referencing, if you are looking at chartered environmentalist, scientist or engineer, these are the relevant ones. Some of these, a lot of these we've referenced in previous weeks, and we will continue in next week. So just think about these as you're going through. The examples we've used may also be relevant for these competencies. Our tips, so we always talk about this, the need to write in the first person. So we're only interested in what you've done and not what your team have done. Make sure you're honest about what you've contributed to a project. So it's absolutely fine to, not have been the project manager. If you've been managing just a couple of people in that project, talk about that, because you're going to have to talk about that at your professional review. So don't make false claims. Understand why you're doing a particular task, what's the bigger picture, and that can really help you frame your understanding of resource management. You may have been given a budget to do this, but what's the understanding of how that budget fits into everything else? If you overspend, what are the consequences? You may have been given a particular area to work within, spatially within a site, and understanding why you have to limit yourself to that area. Be concise in what you're writing. You do have a word limit, so don't set up the example too greatly. Try and jump straight into the examples. Remember what you've written, and don't limit yourself to current employer or paid employment examples. We mentioned this last week that there is a fast track to membership course which is now available. It's a paid for course and not nothing to do with the free webinar series we're running at the moment, but we have worked with the people running that, the CIWEM learning team, to make sure that what we're delivering, what they're delivering are complementary. And it should the webinar, excuse me, the course is delivered remotely over webinar. Will support people at the end of this series of webinars to take the next steps, and particularly give them a bit more one-to-one support that we're not able to do with the numbers of people that we've got online at the moment. So if you want more details about that, do look at the web links there, or have a look on the CIWEM website under learning. A new announcement that I think we mentioned last week, but I just wanted to reiterate, is the CIWEM Mentor platform is now available. That is all absolutely free to use. Do check it out if you want to be a mentor or a mentee. So if you want to support other people, or if you want support, then do have a look at that. There's the link for that, but again, you can just navigate around there on the CIWEM website. It's not just for chartered water environmental applications, or indeed any level of application, but those are some of the areas that you can specifically look for help with. But if you feel that, even if you can't support people with their chartered water environmental manager application, but you have had a good experience of applying for non-chartered member yourself, or graduate member, or indeed any of the other areas of expertise or skills here that you could support others in, do think about signing up as a mentor. There's some really good online training, and so I'm doing some bespoke mentor training as well, if you feel like you want to go for that. But if not, then do think about signing up as a mentee if you are looking for a mentor external to your organisation, and do think about these other areas. So things like career breaks, continuing professional development. There's also things like interview skills, planning, resourcing, and career planning. You might not feel confident going to someone inside your current organisation to get to develop your interview skills and career planning if you're looking at external moves. So this is, potentially a good resource for you to look at that. But do think about that. I think external mentoring is a really good opportunity, and I've already worked with a couple of people on the platform. So do have a look at that, and please do promote it to your network. Okay, so that is it for the slides. I'm just going to go back to our key activities for today, so that people can just jot those down if they want. We will put the slides up later, and the recording, and I'm going to start looking through the Q&A, but if you've got any other questions, do send them in. So our first question is, are we required to cover all the key questions in our competency answer? So no, absolutely not. The key questions are really to tease out some answers for you, and as I alluded to, if you've not delivered any training, that doesn't say that you aren't delivering resources, the management of resources effectively and efficiently. So don't stress too much about that. I have seen some examples where people have literally just tried to respond to them. Often, in my opinion, the key questions for some of the competencies are probably a bit longer than what you might want to write for some of the key competencies, so it's never going to be possible to respond to them all. But use them as examples to frame your answer. But if you feel that you can demonstrate that in different ways, then by all means don't feel that you have to answer all of them. Can I use the same examples for both chartered water environmental and chartered engineering submissions, or indeed chartered scientist, chartered environmentalist? So again, I think we've answered this previously, but you can do. If you have a specific, if you're looking at chartered engineering, then you might want to use a more engineering focused example. And if you do have more than one example, then it does show greater depth and breadth of your experience. But if you're short in a particular area and you do feel that you need to use the same example for both of them, then go for it. Absolutely do. But where possible, it's always good if you can either use two examples for a competency, or differing examples between your chartered engineer, chartered scientist, chartered environmentalist, and chartered water environmental manager example. But they don't need to be completely independent, no. Got a couple more questions. Is the length of the response in the example sufficient, i.e. only a few sentences? So we have taken some of the information out of these, and I've split some of the examples where someone might use two examples within one response. So that's why they're shorter. I would say, in terms of word length, the B competencies are where you probably want to use the most words. So your C's can be slightly more succinct, but they're probably looking at your average length there for C's, with your E's and D's being slightly shorter again. You could put more detail into some of these responses, but make sure that what you've got in there is clearly hitting those points of what resource you're managing and how are you doing that effectively and efficiently. So what tools and what steps are you doing that, and making sure that if you can put a specific project example or a specific named example in there, then that's really what we're looking for. How many competency should I complete to be chartered engineer, including CIWEM? So the competencies for chartered engineer are set out on the CIWEM website. I don't have those to hand, but for if you're applying for chartered engineer through CIWEM, you do need to achieve chartered water environmental manager. So we have to do the 14 competencies for those, as well as the chartered engineer competencies. So you do have to apply for both of them. You can apply for chartered water environmental manager first, and then chartered engineer second, or you can apply for them both at the same time. However, if you're unsuccessful with chartered water environmental manager, you can't then be successful for chartered engineer. With CIWEM, you do have to achieve chartered water environmental manager in order to be successful with chartered engineer. But if you look at the chartered engineer competencies, there's a really nice page on the CIWEM website that sets them all out, and we've included the mapping against our examples here to respond to those. I'm just going to check the chat in case any comments have come through there. That looks clear. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll just give it a moment. Just thank you all for your time today. We're finishing pretty much on time, so that's great for me. But we'll be back next week with I can't remember if it's Ian or Katie now. Looking at, I think it's Ian, isn't it? Looking at Competence C2. Which is understanding and promotion of health and safety. So do dial in for that one. Do remember to sign up for it 24 hours in advance in order to be sent the link. But wish you best of luck addressing your C1 competencies. And if you've got any questions, do look for them. We're going to set up the LinkedIn forum shortly, and hopefully you can post them through there. All right, thank you all, and I shall end the meeting there. Thank you. Oh, one more. No, that's just thank you. Thanks, brilliant. All right, see you next week.